Hello guys, and welcome back to another installment of Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond. I'm your host, Mark Kaler. And before we get started today, I just want to remind you of that upcoming ALS fundraiser in Pat Dwyer's name. It's going to be at Bad Jimmy's Brewing over on Leary Way in Ballard. It's going to be May 15th from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. Trident Seafoods is sending their food truck, the Fork and Fin, there. 100% of all sales of that truck will go directly to the ALS fund. They are gracious enough to donate that for us. Also, they're going to be doing, if you tip that truck $5, you get a drawing card for a box of king crab. They're going to give away a box of a full, of king crab. So another little incentive there. Live band from 8 to 9. It's going to be a really good time. So let's just dive right into it. Today's guest is going to be Laura Hartema. She has spent time up on the Bering Sea on longliners as an observer. And she's also a published author with a book called BERING SEA STRONG. And with that, Laura, welcome.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. This is great to be here.
It's a beautiful day today. I mean, we got the sun out, boats going by. You will probably hear some of that, guys, as they come and go. But
yeah, I mean, I'm glad to ditch work and come out here and talk to you.
Glass of wine, a little microphone action.
Yep, it's nice. So
okay, so let's. You've listened to the format. You've got a pretty good idea of where we're going to go with this, and so let's just dive right in. Where were you born? And
yeah, so I'm a Midwest girl. I was born and raised in Chicagoland. Was there through, the age of 17, born into pretty regular family. My mom was a bartender / hairstylist, and my dad was a contractor, so pretty regular family. I have a brother, wound up moving to the Ozarks of all places, so, city girl goes to the Ozarks. My senior year of high school, and then was down there and wound up going to college at the local school. And then I got this degree in biology. It's like this big world out there and not a lot of opportunity in the Ozarks, and it didn't quite culturally fit me. And so I had come to Seattle on a road trip the year before, and I just loved it. I came across the bridge and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be wedged. I mean, I say to myself, like, I want to be wedged between the mountains and the ocean because I just love the environment here. So I came here on a road trip. I didn't really have a plan other than to get an environmental career job. And then I just picked up and packed my truck and moved here.
How old were you then?
This was in the early 90s. So this was the big .com era, and there was all this opportunity for computer folks. But for biologists, there wasn't really all that much. So I was, my early 20s, 24 years old. Came here with a whole lot of hope and a dream of getting a career, and had a lot of kind of family chaos pulling at me from the Midwest, and so I decided to just pack it all up and take the chance and come to Seattle. So then I got here, and I had applied to graduate school in fisheries at the University of Washington, and so while waiting to get accepted into school, which is my big hope, I just was waiting tables and, just kind of getting by to pay the bills, waiting for this letter to come. And I was working with a graduate student, and I thought I was a shoo-in. I thought, yeah, I'm going to get in with these, these boys. And, I would say in the 90s it was definitely the man's world when it comes to even getting education in science and fisheries particularly. And I've been dissuaded to try, but I just was pretty determined. So anyway, so I remember the day I was sitting there in my little studio apartment in downtown Seattle, and the letter came, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this letter, it's so much is in my fate by this letter. And so I opened it up and I read the first couple words, and it said, unfortunately, and I had been rejected, and I was just so crushed because I had given everything up, moved out here, didn't know a soul, waiting tables with a biology. I think when you get a degree, you just expect to, you expect bigger things for your life. And I'd already, faced a lot of challenges, and it was like, this is my opportunity. And so that really kind of set me back. I just really felt defeated and, like, oh my God, I'm such a big fat loser. And, I have
That's still happening today. I mean, kids are getting out of school, with 4 or even 6 or 8 year degrees, and they're not getting that job in their field,
Yeah, it is. And that's a little bit of the reason why I wrote the book, is because I really want to encourage people to keep, to just not give up on it's kind of cliche, don't give up on your dreams, but I really think determination. I had a guy, one of the professors in college, who told me, Laura, your determination is really what's going to get you far in life. So it wasn't about the grades or where you went to college, or it was like, be determined and it will come to you. So yeah, so I got rejected and I was just devastated, just thinking I'm this big loser, even though, it's relative, right? Because, I had a degree, I earned it, I was doing pretty good, and I was there but living in Seattle by myself and didn't really know a lot of people. But then, it's like I had this message and I remember, no, I actually thought back to this ad that I'd seen in college, and it was on the bulletin board, and it said, make fast cash in Alaska, and I mean, up here, that's no big deal because people are
already making fast cash in Alaska.
Yeah. They get it. But in the Midwest, I mean, I was in southern Missouri in the Ozarks, and I saw this sign, and I thought, oh, Alaska? Heck no. Like, that's so far, and the ocean, it's so scary, and like, there's no way I would do this thing. I mean, maybe not no way, but I had higher hopes, I was like, oh, I'm going to go to graduate school. And anyway, so I wound up calling about, make fast cash in Alaska, but it was for an observer position, and I didn't really know what an observer was. And so I was in a moment of desperation. I couldn't find a job. I didn't get accepted to grad school, and I was like, now what? And so it just kind of stopped me in my tracks. So then I called and I found out more information. I got an interview over the phone through a contractor to be a fisheries observer, and I went through the training, and I discovered what a fisheries observer was.
Which is?
So an observer is a person, usually with a science background, that gets appointed to fishing boats to observe and monitor the catch. So you're not enforcement. You're just a person that goes on the boat and collects data. So it's, where you're fishing, what you're hauling, what you retain, your bycatch, what you're, putting back into the, putting back that you're not keeping, the depth that you're fishing, the area you're fishing, the lengths, the frequency of that species, you'll have some special project like collecting cod stomachs, like what's eating what, or aging fish through otoliths. So
otolith.
The otolith, yeah. The otolith is, so that's it.
Sounds like we're
it's
talking
a cool
Norwegian.
Word.
Otolith.
Otolith, yeah. Yeah, how's your otolith? So the otolith is just an ear bone, and so you cut that out of the fish, and you can read the age of the fish by counting the concentric rings, kind of like on a piece of wood. You do a cross-section of like a tree trunk, kind of the same kind of effect. You can see the growth pattern in a fish through their ear bone. So
what's the importance of having an observer, or what, from your view?
Yeah, so, like I said, it's not code enforcement, but it's really, we're supposed to be unbiased observers. So you go aboard and you're not, that's why I think they're not employed by the government. You have a private contractor that employs you, and you are supposed to be unbiased. And so this is all this data you're supposed to take. You're not looking at the needs of the fishermen. You're not looking at the needs of the government. You're just like, this is your job, and you go and do it. And it's really to keep the fisheries sustainable. So you're managing the fisheries by submitting your data, and that's how they open and close fisheries and find out, are fish getting smaller? Are there a lot more fish in this area? Or, it's how they regulate the fisheries. So
how long was your training?
The training was 3 weeks, and it was here in Seattle at Sandpoint. And, I think in the 90s, things are really different, because in the 90s, this was just after the JV days. So this is, the foreign fleets are getting pushed out. It's becoming a domestic fishery. There's a lot more regulation. Again, 1990s, this is before email and the deadliest catch craze, and, no cell phones. And it's just very different, a different time. So, so it was a different time. And
so you get through this 3-week class, you're fully trained up. You know exactly what you're going to do. Now, with that science background, I imagine you felt a little more attached to the job itself and getting ready to go into this position. But where did you go from there once you got your training done? How did it progress?
Yeah, so you get your 3-week training, and they teach you about all the different fisheries. So you don't know what kind of boat. Initially, when you go into this, you don't know what kind of boat you're going to be on. So you could be on a longliner, a catcher boat, a trawler. You weren't on a crab boat at that time. But, there's a variety of fisheries, and there's different styles or different seasons. So you get educated in all those things, and then you do a test, and they show you how to take the data and how to record everything, and you get an ID test. So you have to go through a key to actually key out the fish so that you know what species is what. So, you get pretty well trained. I'm sure there's been improvements, because back then the manual was like 300 pages, and now it's like 600.
Okay, so you did all this training. That's all done,
Yeah.
right? Now let's get on to the boat. What was that first call? Did you know where you were going? Did you know when you were leaving? How much notice did you have?
Yeah, so there isn't a lot of notice. When the season opens, and so you are kind of prepared and ready, and there's like, you're going out. And the only thing I knew is that I was going to be on a long liner, and they give you a little information on the boat, but back then it was like sketches in a logbook, and I'm sure that's changed. But no, I was super excited. I didn't really know. I was a little bit fearful that they would switch, because as soon things change. I mean, the Bering Sea, there's nothing about this job or a fisherman's job. You've got to be ready. Like, things are going to change right away. And so I was really fearful that they were going to put me on a big factory trawler or whatever it was. Whatever it was outside of what I knew, I was like nervous about it. So I was like, okay, you're going. And then they shipped me up there, and I was a young 24, naive, kind of purist, I don't know. Anyway, so I go up there, and they flew us in, and,
Into where?
Dutch Harbor. Okay. And if you have flown in Dutch Harbor, you know how that ride is. And that was like a Bronco ride in itself. And then we land, and then they're like, get in the back of the truck, and here we go. And it's just like, bam, 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 you get to the plane, you're in the back. I'm sitting in the back of some truck.
All by yourself?
Well, I had another observer with me. And we thought, they're like, hey, hop in. And I'm like, okay, cool. And they're like, no, hop in the back. And so when it's sleeting, and, this is...
uncovered in the back.
Oh, yeah, like, get in the back, and, like, whatever, that's fine. And then we dropped her at her boat, and then they dropped me at my boat, and then they dropped me off in front of this other boat. And I look on the bow, and I'm like, that is not the boat they told me I was going to be on. And it turns out my boat was like the third boat out. So I had this transfer, right? And I had like 80 pounds of gear, and I didn't want to look like this little wimpy girl. And I was like, okay, let's do this, but I was so relieved.
What were you wearing?
Oh, what was I wearing? My extra tufts and jeans and my army jacket. Because, this is the thing, is I just wanted to fit in with the guys. So I went to the Army surplus, and I thought I was a real tomboy. I mean, I learned a lot about myself while I was out there, that I'm not as tomboyish as I thought I was. But yeah, I had my baseball cap and my extra tufts, and wanted to fit in, look like you look like everybody else. So you don't want to draw attention to yourself as a woman. So yeah, so I did this crazy transfer across 3 different boats, and got on my ship, and met it's the usual. You meet the captain, they give you a little tour, and everybody's working and bringing all the produce on board, and all the food, and yeah. And so I was just so excited, and then kind of like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm doing this. Like all times when you push yourself to the edge of something you're uncomfortable with, like, there's so much excitement in it, and then you're also a little bit fearful. And this is the 90s. This is like, I could not get out. I could not like pick up the phone and freak out to anybody. I could not text anybody. You can't Google, you can't email somebody like, oh my God, I'm on this boat and I'm freaking out. So yeah. And then met the captain. He seemed pretty cool. Met some of the crew, and then interesting thing happens, like right when I got on the boat, like within an hour. I was for instance, I was on the boat, and the captain had given me a tour, and he's like, okay, you're on your own. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm not ready to be on my own. And then I wind up knocking on my door, and I shared a room with 3 guys, and so I just learned where I was spending the next 90 days. And I got on the boat, and the guys, I go in there, and I knock on the door, and he's like, yeah, come in. And he's standing there like in his underwear. And I'm like, that's fine, but I'm like this young 24-year-old thing, and I'm already looking at my roommate in his underwear, and I thought, this is like within the first hour. And so I was just like prepping myself, like, okay, here we go, Bering Sea, baby, let's go. So yeah, that was my first day.
So you and 3 guys in a bunk, or in a room?
Not in a bunk.
Not in the bunk.
Well, that could be an interesting story. Though those are the kind of the stories that they make up, but no, that did not happen. So, but yeah, so I shared a room with 3 guys.
So you untie and start heading out?
Yeah, so we untied. We wound up going out to a Russian tramper to offload for many hours, and then we headed out to sea. Did the usual safety drill, and then headed out. Yeah.
How was all this experience happening? I mean, you point out that you're 24 and
yeah,
naive.
I was 24, and this is the thing. It's so exciting. It's something you've never felt and experienced in your life, and I always feel like the Bering Sea is just this. It's not the land, but it's the land of opportunity, and I just feel like you're out there and. The men, I mean, we all have these same goals, I think, in life. Like, I don't think, the observer and the fishermen are that different. Like, we're all trying to better our lives on land, and you're going out to sea and leaving everything behind. And so there's just this beautiful hope that is associated with it. And so, so I started heading out to sea, and I spent the night, and we were about 18 hours offshore. And so my very first haul, I'll never forget it, because this is all, I mean, I have never been out on a boat. I mean, I'd never really been on a boat where I wasn't attached to the dock overnight. Lake Michigan was my ocean. Like, I was never like out on the big ocean. Oh my God. And I woke up and I just heard this crunching. I was like, what the heck? We're going to die. I mean, I think I thought I was going to die like the first 2 weeks of being out there. And I woke up and I went to the wheelhouse, and it was just ice. We were fishing the edge of the ice, and it was ice everywhere. And, they tell you about this stuff, but you don't really believe. You don't believe it until you see it.
So that crunching noise was the ice on the hull?
The crunching noise was the ice, yeah. And I was like, holy crap, just like wild. So, so there was a big learning curve, and there's a lot of doubt, and you want to do a good job, and then you're not enforcement, but you kind of feel like an outsider, and I felt an outsider as a woman. I was the only woman.
How many guys on the boat?
25 dudes.
Woo.
Yep. And then I realized, long lining. I think it's long lining because you're out there for a long time. I mean, we're out there a really long time. So the trips were long, and it can grate on you for a while, but ultimately I just I loved it. I mean, I wrote in the book, a lot of the struggles and the tensions, and there's tensions, and fishing, so it's life. It's just the way it is out there, right? There's tensions between the guys.
What were some of your tensions?
I mean, there were a lot. I mean, I'm pretty lighthearted, and I'm playful, and I like to have fun, but as a woman, you're trying to figure out like where your place is, and how I'm really friendly, but on a boat full of guys, you have to watch it, and so it was always this line of like, how friendly can you be, and how intimate, and I don't mean like intimate. I mean like getting to know people, because the gossip would start, and I just really wanted to get out there. And
I can imagine after even just a week at sea, some of these guys were eyeballing this 24-year-old observer on the boat. And it probably could be equally the opposite. You could have been eyeballing some of them. I mean,
I mean, the first time you're on the boat, you're like, okay, well, who's the cute guys? I mean, it's normal. I mean, I think it's normal, but it's about finding your place and finding how you should be in that environment. And so you're always kind of you don't want to, you want to have fun, and you want to get to know people, but yet you're kind of this outsider. And then if you spend too much time with one person, that's kind of a negative thing. So yeah. So
there was some of those experiences?
There definitely were some of those experiences. And the captain, I had the first trip I had this great captain, and then the second trip, the captain had a totally different captain. So how were they different? And how did the crews react to different captains? Yeah, I mean, I really do believe the captain kind of runs the whole spirit of the ship, and you probably hear that often. I remember even in the safety meeting, the captain was like, look, we have a female observer aboard, put away the porn, drop the F-bombs, serve her, do all these things to help her. And I didn't want people, I didn't want the guys to like change their behavior, but at the same time, you want a little bit of, be a little bit gentle on the girl. This is her first time. So the first captain was he was really great. He was very playful and fun, and he kind of jeer with me and kind of mess around with me. But ultimately, it was, there's a lot of respect. He ran the boat. I think he really cared about his crew, and he was a good leader. And then I had this, another captain come aboard, and the whole spirit of and it's a combination because, again, the guys were out there a long time, and I was out there a long time, and it's just like with anything, you're locked up you're literally locked up with these people for this amount of time, and you're just working and working and working. And so, yeah, so I think that the second captain didn't have the same amount of leadership, maybe the same amount of, he wasn't as invested in his crew, so it was a very different experience.
So the whole spirit of the crew changed too?
Yeah. And, he came in more at the tail end, and so you're out for a long period of time, and people, you're just, back then there was no communication. You couldn't, I think a fax was $15 a page, and a phone call was $15 a minute on a satellite phone that was breaking up the whole time. So it was very, communications were hard, so it's stressful being out there. So I feel like part of that is the leadership, and then part of it was just the time frame of just being out there for 30 days.
Were you receiving any correspondence from home, letters, care packages, or anything like that?
No, not.
Nope.
My first trip.
Mom, Dad, come on.
No, and this is the thing, is my family was kind of the reason I ran away from Missouri. So I wasn't really looking for that support necessarily, but from friends, and the guys would mess with me and be like, oh yeah, the mail buoy, you know how that is. And so no, you had to wait till town. And then we wound up it's in the book, it's kind of funny, but we had this toilet paper emergency. So we had run out of toilet paper before we filled up our freezers, and so we had our sister ship come over and deliver us like cases of toilet paper. And all the guys were getting their mail because it came from the office. And I was the only one that didn't get mail, and I was just so sad. And they were all like messing with me, like, too bad you don't get any mail. But yeah, so, but it's a little bit different now too.
I remember getting mail, being out there for months at a time, and then actually getting something. It really changes everything when you did. But you didn't get any.
Well, not when I was at sea, but then when I came in, I would, you'd load up. It's like you get that one flush of, and then in the meantime, you're writing letters, and I know it's very different now, but very different back then.
Yeah.
So.
And nowadays they get, a lot of boats have internet on, or at least when they hit the dock, they can certainly tap into their Wi-Fi, and
right. Well, and even spoiler alert on the book, but I had returned to sea, and I had worked on a catcher boat out of Alyeska, and then I also worked on a trawler, and so I had a couple different experiences. So each experience that I had gone through was totally different.
I want to hear a couple of these. You keep dodging around. Oh, I've had experiences, but you're not telling me any of them.
Well, come on, Mark.
So let's go. Give me one.
Well,
give me a high moment.
A high moment. Well, I think my favorite contract, so I did 3 contracts. I actually really loved observing. My book will show some of those initial conflicts and some of the drama and all that stuff that goes along. But that's really figuring yourself out, and part of that's where I was in my life, and I loved observing. I loved being at sea. I love fishermen. I love the,
You married one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And divorced. Yeah. Yeah.
She's
next.
looking for another one.
Next. So my favorite, though, I was on this catcher boat out at Alyeska, and I loved it. And these guys were so much fun, and they were my bros.
How big was the crew?
Five guys. I shared a room with one guy. We came into port every 3 days. I had my basketball team. We'd hook up to the dock, hook up the cable, had cable TV. We would cook together. We would shop together. I wasn't a big drinker back then or anything, but they were always like, hey, I'll take you out. But the really cool thing is we wound up going to the gym in Dutch, and we would play basketball together. And so the Norwegian guy...
You and the crew.
Oh, yeah. It was awesome. I loved it. Like, I didn't even want to go back to the Observer bunkhouse because I wanted to hang out with the crew the whole time.
Awesome.
Yeah, they were so much fun. Yeah, we played basketball, and it was like my family. And I actually really felt I extended my contract because I wanted to hang out with them more. And then, I came home, and I did another contract on a big trawler, and that was, every boat is the experiences are so different. It really depends on the crew.
The small ones, though, it's kind of easier to make those bonds. You don't have quite as much drama.
Yeah, and I think you really, you're relying on each other. It's your life out there. And so I think, 5 people you get to know, I think you get to know them more well-rounded than you're just a body and just a person.
Number 24 went by.
Yeah.
There's 19.
Right. Or if you're a schmuck, there's like, instead of 60 people thinking you're a schmuck, there's only a couple people thinking you're a schmuck, so. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed. I mean, I even considered, it's crazy, but, give up my career in biology and go fishing. Like, I loved it that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people who have given up much larger degrees and, tons and tons of life experience to go do this.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, essentially what I learned is that, you go out there and you think, oh, I'm the biologist and they're the fishermen. But it's really not. I mean, we're all out there. We all love the sea. We all, I think it's a grand equalizer. So you're out there and everybody is an equal. And it's like, can you work? Are you a wimp? Are you a slacker? Are you going to work hard? That's really where your value is.
Did you find yourself ever pitching in beyond the observer position? I mean, were you helping out? I mean, because on those small boats, you're cooking sometimes, you're doing dishes sometimes.
Yeah.
Were you that team player? Or?
Well, and I will tell you, in my book, I wrote about it. So on my first boat, I was one woman, 25 guys. And I was out there, and I like to bake, and I like to cook. And so I was filleting fish and cooking and with the cook, and I was baking cookies every day. And then, spoiler alert in the book, but the captain, and this is not the coolest first captain, this is the second one that was a little, had issues, banned me from the kitchen. So I could no longer bake cookies. I was being punished for baking cookies and helping, and I was cooking and doing all this stuff, and I was down there tying ganyons and replacing hooks and fixing the coils and painting the buoys, and I mean, I was right side by side with the guys helping. What else are you gonna do? Read a book? I don't know. Yeah, so I loved it. And then on the second boat, on the catcher boat, I we cooked and hung out, and yeah, they were just always.
So what about some of those uncomfortable positions? Because obviously, there's been some of those too.
Yeah, again, it depends on the crew, the leadership, maybe some of my maturity. After going through it a few times, the first boat was probably the more difficult one, and I wouldn't call it harassment. I would say I endured a little bit of bullying. Part of that is just me being, I don't know, naive maybe, but there were some things that happened, and I also was raised by a tough mama, a little streetwise, and so I'm not like the narc. I don't go and tell on people. I'd rather just deal with it personally. And then if you can't deal with it personally, then you move on. So I think that's my way. And I'm
looking for the story, though. I'm looking for I'm looking for an incident.
An incident,
a specific time.
Okay, so I would say the only time, I mean, there were several things that happened, but the thing that I think remember was and it involves cookies. So I was on the aft deck, and I was repairing gear, and it was a nice day, and I was painting the buoys with the guys, and then I was like, okay, cookie time, because this is my thing. This is before I got banned from the kitchen, but the galley. I'm sorry, I was.
Yeah, get that story right.
Galley stories. It's not kitchen stories. So I was. It was cookie time. I was going to go bake some, couple dozen cookies, a gross of cookies. And I walked into the storage room, and where all the food is stored. And I was up on just climbing up the shelving unit. It's like scaffolding. It's like 4 shelves high. And I was up there grabbing my chocolate chips. And I grabbed this bag of chocolate chips, and all of a sudden, and I am not kidding, I sometimes think it can't even be possible. I'm grabbing this bag of chocolate chips, and all of a sudden, I feel this, I don't know, this grip in basically my rear end, through my Levi's, and I felt this bite, right? I am not kidding. I got bit in the butt by one of the crew members, and I turned around like, what the heck? And I'm kind of a nice, friendly, open person, and I joke about a lot of stuff, but I just got bit in the butt, and I turned around, and I'm like, what the hell? And I just wanted to knock this guy out. So I turned around, and it, obviously it was one of the guys. And I just turned around and I wanted to bat him like a wiffle ball. I just wanted to beat the crap out of him. And so I got down and I jumped off this shelving unit. And I'm like, what the hell? And the thing is like, the first thing, it's almost like I don't blame the person. And I mean, maybe this is to a fault for a lot of women. It's like you always look at yourself like, what did I do wrong to think that this was okay? And I mean, I joke around a lot, so maybe that's part of it, that he felt comfortable enough to do it. But that was crossing the line. And so I basically whacked his hat off his head and almost punched him. Did not. And then he, apologized. And, you move on. I mean, that's the thing, too. Like, stuff happens. You have to, I feel like you deal with the person and then you move on. So, but that's not my whole story. That definitely was part of it. And that some other things had happened that I was uncomfortable. And I just started, like, throwing punches. I was just, like, defending myself. And then I think some other things happened, and then I just dealt with it directly. And then I think through that, I almost feel like then they all stopped. It was this moment. There was this moment, and I had a crush on one of the boys, of course, because you have to have your boat crush because there's cute boys everywhere. But I just had this moment, and they just stopped. And I think it was like a hazing. It was almost like they had to
make sure
push you to the edge, and then you had to lose your mind on them, and then it was fine.
So the ass bite was the edge then?
Well, it was a little bit after the ass bite. There was another thing, and it was really close to that. But I think they saw, okay, you've pushed the Observer. Oh, I guess the other thing that happened that really, I think, even more so than this, that was very, very hard for me, it was, I always brought the guys hot chocolate, Like, I wanted to be, like, one of the crew, Like, I'm a hard worker, and I'm like, I want to be one of the crew. So I'm just down there, and I was giving them hot chocolates, and, when they're cold, give them hot chocolate, feed them hot, cookies, kind of a caretaker. And I walked into the gear room, I looked up on the wall, and I passed out these hot chocolates, and the guys all look at me. And they gave me this look, and I thought, uh-oh, like, because this is one thing I learned about fishing. You read the eyes. Like, you read their eyes, and that is how you know how to react to something. So if it's something scary going down, I just looked around, I read their eyes. And if they didn't look scared, it's like, well, I don't have to worry. If their eyes are like high beaming and, bulging out of their face, okay, now it's time for me to go get my survival suit. So I walked in the factory, and they just kind of looked at me, and I thought, like when somebody's talking about you, you walk into the room.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of those, like, oh. And I looked at them, and then I was like, what? Kind of like, what is it? And I turned around, and they had centerfolds. I mean, centerfolds are beautiful, so maybe that's a compliment, but I don't think so. And they had Observer written above the centerfold on the wall. And this had just been put up, And it really made me upset. I mean, I hadn't been upset for the most part. It's like whatever, you take the jeers and the, the joking and all that. But that really upset me. And so I just went off on them and ran away and went to my room and then bawled my eyes out. But, that's not the average day. And again, that was the build up, and that was...
Every day is almost a reset, right? I mean, you got a job to do. You got to keep going.
Yeah, you have to get a job, and the dramas happen, and it's just like in any family. Like, but this is like me and 25 brothers, and it's just, I think it's human nature, and I think we all have to try every day to be the better people and not do that. So, and then but I know I don't want to like dog the guys, because I love them, and and I just know that we all have our moments, and that was not a beautiful moment, and I don't want to be judged on my worst moment, because I've not done things I'm proud of. So, but most of the time the guys were great, and they're there to support you and help you through, and you're out there, you're all doing the same thing. You all want a paycheck. That's really what it's about. You're trying to better your life.
So there's still a high demand for observers. They're on almost every boat that I'm aware of. They're running out there. What are some things you would suggest to someone thinking about becoming an observer? Obviously, on this podcast we've heard a lot about becoming a fisherman.
Yeah.
But at the same time, every one of the fishermen that's been on here has had an observer on their boat.
Uh-huh.
Looking at him a lot like a police officer.
Yep.
Just kind of viewed that way.
Yep.
At the same time, though, heard the exact thing that you talked about. played basketball with them. We cooked together. We, joked together. We watched
Yep.
movies together. So what would be the suggestions from you today for people looking at going to that Observer program?
Yeah, so I totally think people should do this. It's the most, I would say it's one of the most life-changing things I've ever experienced. You're at sea, you're with fishermen. It's so incredibly beautiful. It's incredibly wild. I don't think there's another place you can go in the world to be so out there. It was just like so exciting. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've loved Alaska since I first went too, 1992, which was about just a few years, about the same time period. And you're right, it's wild and it's beautiful, and it's still today the same way.
Yeah.
It is still, you hear about uncharted territory, and sometimes you're crossing over points of the ocean where no one has been before. At least you can tell yourself that and really convince yourself that no one's been there before.
Yeah, I mean, that whole, even you think of the Bering Sea land bridge, when the glaciers receded, that whole thing is covered with water now. I mean, that is area that used to be land. I mean, it's magnificent. And the waves in it, it's like the scariest you'll ever be. It's kind of like breathtaking beauty. The scariest friggin', like, you cannot be more afraid in some of those moments. I mean, I remember being in that wheelhouse at night and having the gantry lights on or whatever, and you're just looking out at this water, and the water is coming up over the top of the wheelhouse, and you're just looking at this green water, and every time you're like, we're gonna die. And then at some point you just feel like, yeah, this is okay. Like you just kind of settle into it, and I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. I think it's a great opportunity for people that, if you're a biologist, and observing, I think, is a great opportunity for people that can't necessarily find, if you're looking for a job, it's hard and it takes time. But I think, like, the pay is worth it, the experience, you meet incredible guys. It's the mosh pit, of men, really. Like, it attracts the extremes. And so you're going to go out there. I've met highly educated people. I've met people that were maritime, that were trained at the academy. I've met people that were, college degrees. I've met people that really were down and out. I met people that were in jail. And the same thing, the common theme is that they're out there. It's the land of opportunity. And it really is. It still holds. And it's the grand equalizer. Like, it doesn't matter your degree. It doesn't matter what you know. Like, are you a hard worker? Are you determined? Can you put up with a lot of crap? And it's just determination. And
why you gotta censor my show?
What?
Bullshit. Can you put up with a lot of bullshit?
Crap. Well, Yeah, so I just feel like
when the mic's not on, guys, she swears like a sailor. Oh, yeah,
I'm a trucker. Like a fisherman.
Well, we're about out of time here, Laura, but I want to, real quick, give you a little time to talk about where to find your book. A little plug here.
Yeah, so my book is called BERING SEA STRONG, How I Found Solid Ground on Open Ocean, and it's available on Amazon. It's available at Barnes & Noble, Walmart, or a lot of indie stores, your local bookstore. So, I'm hoping people will find interest in it. I think it has a nice balance of, this inner story about overcoming difficult circumstances, but it's also really funny, and it's really, it's not the deadliest catch. It's not all gloom and doom. There's a lot of humor in it. There's a lot of everyday stuff that goes on a boat that I don't think a lot of people really see, the everyday stuff. So I hope I can offer that, and I hope it makes people laugh and makes people just kind of, look at the fishing industry a little bit differently. Okay, so coming out to our ALS event, coming out on May 15th, you're coming to that, is that correct? I'd like to, yes. So remember, guys, to come out on May 15th, Laura's going to be there. Hope to, yep. She is looking for a fisherman. Oh, stop. She's single. So hopefully you come out and meet her. We'll put her in something nice, bells and whistles. Yeah, might wear something, beyond Grundens and extra tufts. So just a reminder, ALS fundraiser May 15th. That's a Tuesday. Bad Jimmy's Brewing Company on Leary Way in Ballard. Again, Trident Seafoods is sending their food truck. And I keep saying that because we can make a lot of money for ALS with this truck. Wouldn't you think? Yeah, at $10 a plate and all that. I'm going to eat like crazy. Yeah, it's a great thing you're doing. So good for you. All of that's going to go right into that Pat Dwyer fund. Yep. And then that $5 raffle for the box of king crab. Who's not going to I'm going to have that. That's mine.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna put mine in too. You know, I might have to tip a couple extra, a little extra to get a couple more tickets. But yeah, so it's gonna be a great event, guys. Just come out and help support us, not us, but the fight for ALS.
Yep.
And we will be doing a live podcast that day. Can't give too much away on that one, but it's gonna be fun. Laura, you have anything you want to say before we wrap this up?
No, I just want to really thank you for this opportunity. It's a really cool thing you're doing, and I love the whole fishing lifestyle, and it really affects everybody in the Pacific Northwest. And I think you're doing a really good thing here, a good service for getting the fishermen are out there for a long time, and their stories aren't always heard, and lots of media coverage now with the deadliest catch. But I feel like they all have really cool stories, and so I think you're doing a good thing here.
I appreciate that. Any preferences on what this man's going to be? I mean, how tall does he need to be?
It has to be 5'10", be able to bench press me, and
Okay, 5'10". If you're over 5'10", show up.
I'm just kidding.
All right, guys, we've enjoyed recording this one today, and we look forward to seeing you on May 15th there at Bad Jimmy's, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks all.